Just saw a photo of Kane Williamson and David Warner on the front page of the Herald Sun. They're in full PPE, which is a weird look for a cricketer, because they're over in India. An absolute disaster unfolding in India. It's already unfolded. Coronavirus has gone nuts over there. Now the thing about that is people who are, and this is the sort of point of this episode, excuse me, I have to move. The thing about that is people who are connected to India and with India are feeling it more than the rest of us. Now, should we be feeling it as much as those people are? Because we know that if we did get connected to India, we would. The example I heard on the radio is, for example, Pat Cummins. They're all over there for the IPL and all that sort of stuff. Pat Cummins, I think, donated $50,000 to the task of getting more oxygen into Delhi. Kane Williamson and David Warner were heading into Delhi for some reason, but they were dressed head to toe in the full spacesuit, which is bizarre. Imagine that, you know. That's just to go on the bus. That's how crazy it is in Delhi. There's disasters happening in other places in the world. My goddaughter, for example, is connected with Ethiopia, and there's disasters going on over there, and she's very connected to that, and that affects her, you know. But perhaps, I don't know, I haven't asked her, India affects her less than Ethiopia does. And for Pat Cummins, for example, I'm sure that Ethiopia affects him less than India does at the moment, because he's connected with India. A lot of cricketers really fall in love with India. India is the sort of place, I think, that you'll fall in love with if you get to know it, if you get over there with your baked beans like Shane Warne did. Notable cricketers, Brett Lee, Shane Warne, Dean Jones, Dino, and all these people have totally fallen in love with India and got connected to it. Now, the way to an easier life is to stay disconnected from trouble spots, places where trouble could happen. And this is an interesting thought, because that's me, really. I have no connection with Ethiopia, India, or anywhere else. I pretty much live in my own little bubble here in Essendon, in Australia. Now that's an interesting thing. So am I a bad person? Well, yes, because I know that if I were connected with India, I would be moved to do something about, maybe even send $10 towards some oxygen. Because there's people actually suffocating in their cars because they can't get a hospital bed, suffocating. Wouldn't you send $10 across towards that? And why aren't I? Why aren't I doing anything for the Tigrayans in Ethiopia, who are also under fire, literally? I could be sending money across there, and same goes for a whole lot of other places in a lot of trouble as well. All right then. Now, possibly, I haven't even thought this through. A good person is someone who does something for someone, and that person isn't me. But is it a wrong thing to do, as Little Princess used to say, is it a wrong thing to do to kind of deliberately not get emotionally involved with any place that is likely to need you to get more heavily involved, because it's one of those hotspots. Like India, very crowded. So if a virus is going to come along, it's going to wreak havoc. Ethiopia, has a war every 20 years, massive slaughter every 20 years or so, and probably has done so for the last 3,000 years. So even in the peacetime moment, in between those wars, do you fall in love with the place or do you stay away? Putting aside the possibility that you're just curious and you want to get to know a place for that reason, but then you end up falling in love anyway. But is it a wrong thing to do if you're not all that curious, or if you are curious but only in a sort of a Google-ish sort of way, where you take an interest in places like Ethiopia and India and all these other places, but only in an academic sort of way, studying their history and all that sort of stuff, but not getting to know anybody from any of those places. That's me, you see. Now, is it a wrong thing to do? I don't know whether I'll be able to come up with an answer for that, but here's the thing. One knows that if one did get connected to any of these places, one would definitely be freaking out and trying to do something for these places. Now, intellectually, logically, I sort of think, well, given that I know that, I would be reacting that way if I got to know anybody from India or Ethiopia or anywhere else. Given that I know that, shouldn't I do something anyway? Because with that, excuse me, I've got to, simply because I know that I would, if I educated myself a bit more, both intellectually and emotionally. So given that I know that I would, then should I? There's the thing. So this reminds me a little bit of my wife's grandfather, who once said, you get to fall in love. You have a little bit of choice as regards who you fall in love with or what you fall in love with. And he used to say, you can just as easily fall in love with someone who's got a lot of money and a job as someone who hasn't. So why wouldn't you fall in love with the guy with the cash and the job? That's what he used to say. And it's hard to beat that logic, I think. And this goes for falling in love with other countries and other cultures and all that sort of stuff. If you don't get too connected, you'll never feel all that guilty if you do nothing. Should you feel guilty? I possibly think that you should do something for someone, but not for everyone, only because of the practical consideration. But then again, I don't feel all that guilty. So, I sort of think, well, I could help India out right now and send $100. See, as I think about that, I think I should. $100 towards the oxygen relief effort. And I should do something for the Tigrayans too. Maybe go into the city square and march for their rights or something. And for a whole lot of other people too. And at that point, look, probably the right thing to do, because it's not wrong to ignore any one of these things, because Indians, no doubt, even rich ones, are ignoring Ethiopia, and Ethiopians, even wealthy ones, are probably ignoring India at the moment. So there's nothing wrong with ignoring something bad happening in a given country. Probably the right thing to do is, well, there's two scenarios. You may be connected with some group that is having a hard time, and that could be even an identity group like LGBT, all that sort of stuff, Indigenous Australians, all that sort of thing. I'm getting a little bit more connected intellectually, at least, with Indigenous Australians lately. I forget what I was going to say there. I've got too many people walking around. It's not wrong, I think, to ignore any given charity, if you like. But one probably should do something for someone, so that everyone's doing something. That's my gut feeling. Now I'm doing nothing for anyone, really, just for my own family and friends and loved ones and all that sort of stuff. I keep it small, but maybe I should be doing something for someone. And but then who? You know, and intellectually, I sort of think, well, I'm not connected with any of these mobs or identity groups or anything. I'm not connected to any of them. I'm not connected to anybody who's in a difficult spot, and needs people to step up and help. Desperately need that. So my feeling is, you could just, probably what the right thing to do would be to put all the names of all the countries doing it tough into a hat, and all the identity groups who are doing it tough into a hat too, and shaking it all up, picking one out, and then contributing to that cause. But make it random, because that's the only way you could do it in a fair way. Now, once you did that, that would be your cause. Celebre? That would be your cause. But then what do you do? If someone says to you, there's a disaster happening in India, you must do something. You can't just stand here and let people starve of oxygen. Or in other times, even when there's no coronavirus, you can't just let people die, live in poverty like that. Do something, and someone who's into causes Indian might say that to me, and I'd sort of be able to say, well, actually, I contribute monthly to World Wildlife Fund or something. Hey, did Prince Charles and Prince Philip had something to do with that? I think the World Wildlife Fund. I think he did. He also shot a tiger in India on one occasion, but he said that was not inconsistent with trying to protect wildlife. He said, in fact, I was helping. That was 40, 50 years ago. So that's what you probably should do, and probably it would be an okay thing to do, to say, no, I can't help you. I can't, and I don't want to. In fact, I want to shut my ears a little bit, because I don't want to get connected. I don't want you to tell me I don't want to know in too much detail how bad it is in India. Now, I sound really terrible here, but I think this is what everybody does just about. And I don't want to really know how bad it is in Tigray either. Someone from Ethiopia comes up to me, and there was that refugee crisis where everyone was under pressure, when that poor little kid, washed up on a beach, Alan, who might have been Alan, and his photo was all over the world, and people were crying their eyes out and going down to the city square and all that sort of stuff in every major city in the world, crying their eyes out for the refugees who were drowning in the Mediterranean. And at that point in time, I didn't really want to. Now, imagine I was contributing. In fact, I might have been contributing to animal welfare back then. I had to stop it for some reason. But it's not about me, really, all of this. But if I was already giving to the animals at that point in time, was it a wrong thing for me to do? To say, look, just because everybody is emotionally involved because they have a photo of a child who drowned in the Mediterranean, does that mean I have to, or should I? And if so, because I'm not connected at that point, and if so, there's been drownings in the Mediterranean only in the last couple of weeks, and I've been watching them, and all those people who were crying back then aren't crying now. So should they be crying now if I should have cried back then? It's a tricky thing. Look, you could talk about this till the cows come home, but in the end, I think you should have one cause at least where you're helping someone out. That's what I think, and I might have to do that. I need to get that hat.